Hey everyone, I'm on my way to Walmart. I'm gonna look at game cams. Now I haven't done too much with game cams since I tried to set up that hidden log camera out at the 400 that involved a door camera that was designed to go through a peephole of the door. And I went through 3 or 4 different variations of that trying to make it work, only to have it succumb to moisture almost every time, because it's an inside camera not made for exterior, so it was a lot of wasted time and effort. But I learned a couple of things from it. I am going to use that same log and I'm going to surface mount a regular game camera inside that log and just try to camouflage it out really well. So I'm going to stop by Walmart, see what they've got. I don't think it has to be a very expensive camera. I don't think the technology has to be, super expensive technology in the game camera. I think it's about hiding it correctly. I'm going to make a video about what success I've had with what little game camera use I have used. So I do believe that they can be fooled with these cameras. And we can speculate all day long as to what you think they know about these cameras or what they can perceive about these cameras. You and I may not be on the same wavelength as that, because of what I've had happen tells me one thing. So I try not to speculate too much about what I don't know. I do know they can be tricked, and so now we just got to figure out the best way to do that. So my next stop's gonna be at Walmart. I may go to Cabela's. I'm about 30 minutes away from Cabela's in Kansas City. Don't know if I want to pay that extra money for the Cabela's, game cameras, if Walmart will have something that that'll work for me, because I would like to get a couple of them. I would like to set these things up in different locations for different reasons, and I will explain all that in this video. What about us, boss? All right, here we go. We got these 2 little bone collector cameras by Bushnell. Very, very small. I like it. And if you guys remember this old log here where I had the door camera. The lame door camera that never did work out for me. I am going to take this apart and we will surface mount that little camera into that log. my thoughts about game cameras. I have certainly used game cameras over the years. Some success, not many, but I'd like to talk about some of the things, some of the successes, and some of the things that I've tried, to maybe help you. And I'm sure everyone out there is, still trying to use game cameras. And, you know, whatever your ideas are on the perception of game cameras and the reasons why, it's neither here nor there for me. I just go with what has worked, and I'm going to lay out the reasons why I think you should not give up using game cameras. I think, I think they can be put in places where they won't necessarily be recognized as cameras. Basically, you can trick a Bigfoot. I believe that I have tricked them in the past with just a couple of times. So I'd like to go over that and tell you what my plans are now, because I just bought two game cameras. I know the people that follow me know that last year or 2 years ago I tried to put a camera in a log that was made for a front door. So it was made for a peephole camera, but it was an interior camera made for the interior of the door. So it really wasn't weather tight or weather, resistant. And through 3 or 4 different workings of that camera and about $1,000, it never panned out, because the moment any type of moisture, you know, got even close to the camera, it would render it ineffective and not work. So that had to be scratched. But I hung on to that log that I had hollowed out, and I just bought two small game cameras. So I'm going to have two of those logs that I'm going to be using, and I will explain to you how I'm going to use them and why I'm going to use them. But first, I want to show you a couple of successes that I've had in the past. Now, I shared these on a video. Uh, the one video was about patterns of behavior and communication. You can always go back, any video that I reference, you can always go back and watch it to, to see how it compares to what I'm saying now. I always try to remember things so that I can, you know, move things forward and have things fit progressively as I learn things. So in that video about patterns of behavior and communications, uh, I was able over time to figure out where I could put a camera placement and have it less likely to be seen based on a behavior that was going on at the time throughout that course of time in that location. And indeed, one time there was success. In the fact that the camera was placed on the backside of a tree in the same trajectory that this creature was coming across this ridge to look down into the campsite. And the pattern was showing that they were using this behavior over and over again. So I thought that I would utilize that knowledge and place the cameras in positions to catch them staying behind the trees, moving across this particular stretch of area. And indeed, I got lucky. And that is, the camera was about 7 feet up, maybe a little less, but it was over my head. The camera was on the back side of a tree away from my campsite, across the logging road, uh, just above my head. So I would say it was 6.5, 7 feet. And one night, a lot of this has to do with being random too. I mean, just because you put a camera up doesn't mean that they're coming through at that moment or even over the next couple of days. So for the course of time that I had that camera up while I was there camping, I did get lucky. So at one point, something must have come through there. And the first picture on there was hair. at 7 foot up, just and you can tell that it wasn't up against the camera, say like a raccoon climbing the tree. We've all seen those type of pictures where there's hair right up against the camera where, it's clearly a raccoon or some type of animal, you know, climbing a tree. This was hair, it looked like it was brushing in front of the camera. And then there was a second picture. Sometimes I would maybe dismiss a random picture like that, but it had a second picture that I could compare and put the two together and come up with a reasonable explanation as to the the pattern of events that captured both pictures. To me, it looks like the hair is in a downhill flowing manner as it's crossing the camera, and then maybe the camera going off captured the attention of whatever crossed in front of it. And then the next picture, it looks like it's a palm where you can see the creases in a palm. It's almost like there was a palm placed over the camera, because the skin looked like it was the color of maybe, burnt leather, dark leather, and it had folds in the skin. To me, it looks like a palm. And the fact that it was after the hair picture, I can reasonably put two and two together, but I will show you the two pictures. All right, here's the hair picture. Clearly, at the height of the camera on the tree, that looks like a downward flowing hair. Walking by the camera. I think you can see some tree foliage back there, possibly. Of course, it's a nighttime picture, so it's just an interesting flow of hair. And then the next picture was what I say is a palm print. You can see it's dark skin, and there's a fold of some sort. And then there's a fold right over here at the bottom left corner, almost like maybe that there's a digit over there, like maybe a thumb or a finger. And then that's the part of the palm that has some type of fold in the skin. And then again, if this was a standalone picture, I could say, well, it's the nose of a raccoon, or the nose of an opossum that's on the side of the tree. But the combination of the pictures, with that flowing hair, some distance in front of the camera, and then this picture here, I think is very interesting. Plus, giving the pattern of behavior over time, that is the same path being used even by the ridgewalker, where we caught on video, the ridgewalker video, the same trajectory. So, I mean, you really need to watch that video if you want to get an understanding of why I think patterns of behavior are so important, even to randomly get lucky. This was just a random, getting lucky with a couple of pictures. Surely I would have liked to have gotten a face shot, but this was the next best thing. Okay, now the next success that I bought back in that time period. I bought some Cuddeback cameras, and at the time they were like the best cameras you could get from Cabela's or Bass Pro, and they were like $500, and I had 4 or 5 of them. Gee, if I could just get some of that money back, that'd be great. But so I had gone through a series of just trying trickery and putting the cameras and trying my best to hide the cameras. And when I was at Bullet Maker's place in Oklahoma for a couple of years, I even went through a stretch where I bought a ladder that you could extend one rung at a time, and it was a 15-foot tall ladder. And I would carry that back in there where I had all these cameras. And over time, I kept raising the cameras and raising the cameras till at some point I had the cameras probably 18 feet. I would have the ladder fully extended, and I'd be, reaching up above the last rung to place these cameras. So I had these cameras up, 16, 17, 18, 19 feet up, overlooking creek banks and creek beds and trails and things like that. Never had any success with it there. But I tried, I thought moving the cameras higher and higher up out of their field of view, might be the key. But and it might be the key. It just wasn't there. It didn't happen there. So anyways, so that was my experiences there. And I'd also dug holes in the side of a creek bank and stuck the cameras within the hole, and you know had a hanging fish bait out over the creek. you know I didn't do that very much. I think I only did that for a night or two when I was there camping once. I think that technique has merit. I hope you guys are listening. Digging a hole in the side of a dirt bank and recessing the camera back into the hole, and then putting some type of attractant, bait attractant, out where something moves out in front of the hole will get their picture taken. But they won't be able to see. They won't even be able to see the camera until they look into the hole, and then they'd get a face shot. So I think there's some merit to that technique. I have not tried it very often. I only tried it that once. So I need to make mental notes that certainly is something that I should try more often. Uh, so also I want to talk about the Chickasaw Park. When I was there, you know, people ask me all the time, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? You have no idea what I tried there. I tried so many different things. I put carpet tack painted black on my ladder racks in case something came back in and grabbed my ladder racks again. The very sharp carpet tack, would catch some skin and maybe even some blood and tissue. I hid in the back of my truck myself. I made boxes with camoed fronts that I could get in the box in the back of my truck. I mean, I'd spent so many uncomfortable nights trying different things. Uh, but I did try some camera placements around camp, up under the wheel wells of the vehicle, things like that. But it also goes to show you the randomness of when these things visit, and what patterns they're on. You just can't know for sure. Uh, what are their perceptions of what you're doing or what's going on? That's what I'm trying to figure out. So at that particular park where I had my Chickasaw Park encounter, and this is explained in my Chickasaw Park encounter video, and I show these pictures, but I'm going to show them again here. What I did, this was 4 months after my encounter there. I had been going back like every weekend. My fire department schedule was allowing me to, have a couple days on, 4 days off, or day on, day off, day on, day off, and then 4 days off. So every time I would get a 4 day stretch off, I would go down to go down there. I mean, I was relentless going down there, just trying so many different things. Well, I got lucky one night. 4 months after my encounter, I had the camera on a table. Uh, this is after I had talked to Charles Hallmark, and he said that they were fond of Fig Newtons, that he had learned that one of the baiting systems that he was doing in the trash cans there, Fig Newtons was one of the things that they seemed to be fond of. So on the lantern post, I'd stacked up about 4 or 5 Fig Newtons at the top of the apex of that bend. So I had to use a chair to reach up there. So it was still 8 foot high. So I didn't have to worry about a raccoon getting up there. But I also had a bag full of food hanging on the lantern post. So I had the camera on the table. It was a cutty back camera. Took color photos during the day, and at night it took black and white photos. I don't know why a camera will take. I have no idea what the technology was back then. I just knew that at night it switched to black and white pictures. So don't know the reason for that. Uh, so I had the camera sitting on a table facing the baits, And it also goes to show you that baits aren't always necessarily a very good attractant. I don't think I don't think they're too worried about, you know, the food too much. When it comes to curiosity, I think their curiosity overrides the food baits. They're less inclined to mess with food baits. Uh, Needless to say, I got lucky. I had the camera on a table with a bunch of other camping supplies. Specifically, I stacked it all together to make it just look like a big pile of plastic Tupperware containers, a couple of bags of tents, and all these other tent supplies, all kind of randomly stacked on top of the table. So the camera was just kind of hidden in the middle of all that, facing that direction that had the baits. Well, and sometime that evening, in the middle of the night, something came up, and it came in low and then came up like this, and the camera caught a picture of its head at this corner, and then it stood up and caught a shoulder and an armpit, like that, much like that. Uh, so I will show you these two pictures. That night, there were three pictures taken on the game camera, and I want to show you the third picture first. The third picture was me the next morning checking the baits to see if anything touched the baits, and nothing had touched the baits. So I didn't even know that there were two other pictures taken. So here are the other two pictures. All right, so here's the first picture where it came up, and you can see the lantern posts. You can actually see the cookies on the top and the bag. Whatever came up there, you can see it's got a round head, and it looks like it came up just at the corner of the camera where you've got this emblem down here that says Cuddy Back Camera. So that emblem happens to be in a position where when some people look at this picture, they're like, that's a person, because that looks like a collar. I've had somebody say that looks like a collar, but it's not a collar. It's on every picture. It's the Cuddy Back uh logo that's on the corner of every picture. This just happened to come up in that spot. But I look at the round head with the hair. You can see the hair, and I don't know if that may be one of the ears on the side of the head right over here. Maybe that's the top of an ear there, just under the hair, that's kind of pushing the hair out. I don't know, but there's clearly no pointy ears on the top. So it rules out raccoon, possum, anything with pointy ears, cat, dog, whatever. But this isn't the best. To me, this isn't the best picture. Even though if somebody can clear it up, I think we would see the face of a Bigfoot there. But it was so close to the camera, it was just coming up over the edge of the table, so that it washed out white. Then it went into a vertical position where it stood up. So here's where it stood up, and it again, it's so close to the camera, it's right at the edge of the table that you can see the top of the arm, and you can see the hair in a downhill flow. It's flowing downhill, like that's the shoulder going down the arm, and this is the armpit, and you can actually see the flow of the hair on the chest flowing that way. So that's the bottom of the arm. You can see that there's hair there, and that's the chest muscle, the top of the arm, and you can see a flow of the hair, which to me, that is a great picture, especially since it came in on the ground, it came in low, and then came up the table, got its picture taken of its head, and then it stood on up, and it captured the armpit shoulder area. Now, all I can tell you is it did not register that there was any infrared with the camera. Uh, I don't think it clearly, the camera didn't exhibit anything that made it afraid. It didn't recognize it as a camera. It didn't recognize it as the infrared or the batteries, all of the things that people claim these things know and can hear and feel or whatever, why didn't it happen then? Uh, so I don't think the reasons that most people throw out, and most people just parrot what other people say. Other people say, "Oh, it's infrared, infrared." So now everybody says it, but they say it without really knowing. I don't think it's the infrared. I don't think it's the batteries, because I think they can be tricked. That's why I'm trying to hide some cameras in some logs right now. I think if we put them in the right spot and the right moment, random moment, uh, you know, I think we could get lucky with the camera. I don't want to give up on the cameras, uh, but I do want to bring up when now that we're talking about the infrared and the things like that suggest that they are perceptive of those particular things of the camera. I want to bring up the Sierra Sounds from Ron Moorhead and Al Berry in the late 60s and early 70s. They talked about trying hard to use cameras then to catch pictures of the creatures up there around their deer camp. They had camera traps, and I believe it was string triggered. They set them up with string triggers and things like that. These cameras were not advanced cameras like we have now. There was no infrared. There wasn't a bunch of lithium batteries in them and all of this stuff. So they said that all of their cameras were avoided, destroyed, uh, things like that. So I'm going to pull that up so you can hear that.
But more important to him, he also had found long strands of fine hair caught in pine boughs at eye level, where one of the creatures had left its 19-inch long prints as it swung around a tree. It was subtle but persuasive evidence that the creatures were flesh and blood and really existed, and that the events of the night before were not part of a pipe dream or the product of an elaborate hoax. The most important evidence, however, were the tapes, the continuous recordings he had made. There would be other recordings of the creatures for nights to come, until the camp was under snow. But his hidden camera traps, which he would carefully set up in the pine around the camp area, would be mysteriously ripped from their moorings. He would find their parts dangling from limbs and scattered about in the ground. There would be no photographs.
All right, so even then, in the early 70s, their cameras were avoided, destroyed, scattered around, hanging in branches. So what's the significance of those cameras being avoided or being known that it was trickery? Or that, I mean, you're really going to have to wrap your head around that. Why then were they avoided? And why doesn't that compare to what's happening now? Instead of it just being the infrared and the batteries, the, those don't compare. So what is it about those cameras that are the same as these cameras? More than likely, they're probably watching you most of the time. Some of my videos, like the walkie-talkie incident, I firmly believe that they followed us the whole time that we were there in order to find those items that we lost that they returned in those rock cairns. So when it comes to patterns of behavior, some of it might be that they're constantly watching that, and the times that they're not, you know, maybe there isn't Bigfoots there. Maybe they're, you know, I've been out with people and I myself is guilty of this, where you want so bad for all the sounds that you're hearing to be Bigfoot, and every knock and every owl and every coyote call becomes a Bigfoot. But man, we've got to get over that, because that is not the case. But it makes things exciting. And so, you know, it's going to be hard to convince people that every sound is not a Bigfoot. So when they put out a camera in an area where there just isn't any Bigfoots,
but they believe there are Bigfoots there. Then they come up with the reasoning, well, the Bigfoots here are avoiding the cameras and changing the technology and, you know, zapping the batteries and all of these things. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I think more often than not, most people say Bigfoots are around when they're not around. And that is really clouding up the information that's coming in. So, you know, success is going to be very rare, you know, unless we come to terms with, you know, what we're trying to do here. Uh, Needless to say, I don't believe it's the infrared or the batteries or the thing like that. Maybe it's because they're plastic. You know, the fact that I was able to hide that one on the table and on the backside of a tree in a position where it didn't catch it until it already started taking pictures. So that's what I'm going to go on. So I'm currently working on these cameras that I'm burying them in log. And I'm going to give you two reasons why, where I'm going to use these. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine named Chad who lives in Oklahoma. He's been researching longer than I have, and he's had a lot of interesting things that he has seen, and I trust his judgment. He said that he was down with some other people at Brown Springs, you know, down off the Red River in Oklahoma, and he said they had a visitor one night, or at least a couple of visitors that stayed behind the vehicles, and they didn't know it till the next, you know, till they found some handprints, and one of them was where an ice chest got opened up. Now, you know, I've also had recordings of ice chest lids being opened, and they had a wet handprint where something had reached into an ice chest and had a wet hand. And so one of the handprints on the back was wet of the vehicle. So he had multiple handprints back there where it used the vehicle as cover from where they were at. You know, I believe that because I witnessed it myself at the Chickasaw Park, where the Bigfoot, you'll have to watch the video if you want to hear the details but the big one and the little one moved into a position where the truck was between them and the tent. How many times do we need to hear this for us to start thinking maybe it's showing a pattern? How many times do they come into a campsite using a vehicle as cover? I even have another incident on a video that I put out about the creek, that the Bigfoot coming down the creek. Was it using the creek to approach my camp? And the rock clacking and the rock throws. Well, the reason I was there was because a previous time we were there with a group of people, and a guy went over to get into the back of his trunk, and there was a Bigfoot on the side of the vehicle on the River Reed side, and it spooked him pretty bad, and it was a young one. So it had come in using the vehicle as cover and was right up against the vehicle on the River Reed side, and we were all out on the river on the other side. So it was on the back side of the vehicle again, using the vehicle for cover. So that's three instances. So now it's time where I have to start thinking, if I want to increase my chances for a photograph, then I may have to target the area behind the vehicle, position the vehicle in my campsite to give it a little distance away from my tent and give it the proper cover where something can come out of the wood line and use the vehicle to, you know, to peer at the tent area or the kitchen area or whatever. And then these log recorder cameras that I'm putting together is going to be on watching the rear of the vehicle. So I'm going to have it just in the brush line, specifically watching the rear of the vehicle. I think there's going to be a certain degree of possible success in that if the pattern holds true, that more often than not, they will go for whatever can give them cover, even if their curiosity is wanting them to come in close. They're still going to use something for cover, and nothing better than a vehicle to give them good solid cover, especially if they think you're in a tent. Uh, so I think that might be my pattern. That's why I need two cameras. I've got two plans. One camera is going to be specifically for just having sit on a wood line, watching the rear of a vehicle that is specifically going to be set up for a nighttime visitor. My last trip there, which was part two of that, New Area X trip, that last night there was something close. Something came in close. Lots of noises, lots of rocks, knocks and branch breaks and throws and even vocals. So I believe that was the type of night that you need to have one of these cameras set in the right spot. Now, you've got 360 degrees around a campsite. There's no way to know where one might come through, and it might just stay out on the periphery, lob in a few rocks, make a few noises and then move on. So it's so random that we need to pinpoint a specific area that has a certain degree of possible success. And I think behind a vehicle is now telling me that that's where I need to concentrate, having one of these log cameras set up. So, as you know, I built a second one, and it is also going to be based on what was told to me by, and I did a video about it. It's the Army Ranger guy from Fort Lewis, Washington, who I put siding on his house, and he told me that he saw a Bigfoot, and he's an older gentleman. So he sat on his couch and he told me the story, and I think it's my friend's 1976 Fort Lewis encounter. Anyways, you can find it, and he said they were on patrol, night patrol, and so there's a whole line of guys, traveling in the dark, and he's bringing up the rear. And he said he was hearing something behind them. So he veered off the trail and hunkered down, thinking it was a superior officer. And his platoon kept on going. Now, the thing is, they're very quiet. They're trying to do night maneuvers using a lot of hand signals and, whatever, compasses. And I mean, I'm only assuming that there's not a whole lot of chatter going on. And my friend thought that maybe a superior officer was checking their perimeter and making sure that they were staying on top of their security and things like that. So that's why he ducked off and was hunkered down. Well, just watch the video. He talks about seeing a Bigfoot coming down that trail, which was pacing them or following them. So that's what I'm basing my second camera placement on. Something like that happening. We all know that people being paced is a constant behavior that is reported all the time. People being paced and followed and things like that. So what I'm going to do is one of these logs, I'm thinking of during the day finding a really good remote spot that I can place this either on a trail or in a creek bed or whatever, and set it up and have it all decked out, branches and hidden. Do I run the risk of being seen? Sure. Uh, if I do it about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe not. Because they got a nap at some point. So I think probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They haven't got up yet, or they probably are napping at some point, and that's probably the optimal time from about noon to 3 to do something if you're going to try to be stealthy. So I would set the camera up somewhere hidden in the brush, watching a trail, and then at night, midnight, 1, 2 o'clock, you and a couple of other people go out on a nice long mile or two hike through the woods and meander slowly, sit, chit chat, hope that you're getting followed, hope that you're getting noticed. Maybe wait until you do hear some things behind you that makes you think you're being followed, and then work your way down and walk past the log camera and meander that way. And maybe if you're being followed, the creature will pass that camera also. So that's my plan for the second camera. I think it's sound. I think it's good reasoning. So I've got some other things planned for my next trip. We've got a bad series of rainy weather for the next couple, 2 or 3 weeks. I don't know how that's going to work out. So I don't know when I'm going to get back down there. But when I get back down there, there's going to be some plans, and I may need some people to go with me. Because of this, I want to do a night hike. It'd be nice if some women went too, because how they could be a good attractant. But putting this log out somewhere that we could eventually patrol by it in single file or whatever and hope that we're being followed, I think there's a good shot at that being successful. So, uh, anyways, stay tuned. And you, like I said, I've got some other plans, and I will explain those maybe in another video, or when I'm actually out there. I'm going to put some things together for the visitor that I expect at the camp again. I'm going to prepare for that. So I hope you enjoy this. The game camera stuff, keep working with them, keep trying to hide them. Do your best, but don't give up on them. I think the cameras can be successful, but I don't think that they can. I don't think they recognize the cameras for the same reason that we've been hearing other people say. Uh, so I'm just going to keep trying. So we will see what we shall see. So come on, folks, hit that subscribe button. My last video had like 14,000 views, and I've only got 2,900 subscribers. So that's like, I don't know, 11,000, 12,000 people who've watched the video and has not subscribed. That is a big lopsided number. So please, it can't hurt to just subscribe. Help me out, and you won't miss out on anything.